Before you scroll away, stop for 1 second, because what you are about to hear was written for exactly this moment, this exact morning, whether you feel ready for it or not. Take a deep breath right now. Let your shoulders drop. Whatever happened yesterday, whatever mistake, whatever heartbreak, whatever silence from someone you needed to hear from, none of that gets to decide how today begins. Today is not a repeat. Today is not a continuation of your worst moment. Today is a brand new gift, placed directly into your hands by a God who did not have to wake you up this morning, but chose to anyway. His mercy did not wait for you to earn it. It was already running ahead of you before your eyes even opened. His love did not check your track record from yesterday before deciding to show up today.
And His grace, right now, in this very second, is already standing at the door of everything you are about to walk into. Every conversation, every decision, every fear you have not said out loud yet. So before we go one more second, quiet your heart. Let go of your phone, your to-do list, your racing thoughts for just this one moment. This is not a video you scroll past. This is the moment where you stop carrying today alone. Come pray with me. Not as a viewer, as someone who needs this exact prayer on this exact morning, more than you have admitted even to yourself. Heavenly Father, thank you for this new day. Thank you that I opened my eyes this morning, that there is breath in my lungs and strength, even if it feels small, in my body. I refuse to call this just another morning, because I know that not everyone who went to sleep last night woke up today. And the fact that I am here means your mercy has already carried me further than I deserve. Lord, I thank you for every simple thing I usually ignore. For the light breaking through my window. For the sound of my home waking up. For the chance to take one more step, to say one more word, to make one more choice that can move me closer to your heart. I choose right now to see this sunrise as your reminder that you have not given up on me, that your love is still here, that your faithfulness did not end with yesterday's mistakes. So I place this entire day into your hands. Every path I will walk, every room I will enter, every message I will read, every call I will answer. Go ahead of me and prepare what I cannot see. Open doors that belong to your plan and close every door that looks attractive but would pull me away from your will. I do not want to live this day on autopilot or by anxiety. I surrender control to you, not because I am weak, but because you are wiser than every plan I could ever make on my own. Guide my thoughts before they run wild. Guide my decisions before I rush into them. Guide my reactions before my emotions take over. Let your Holy Spirit whisper in the middle of my schedule, redirect me when I drift, and remind me again and again that I do not have to carry this day by myself. Father, you see every silent fear I am carrying into this day, the worries I have never said out loud, the what-ifs that play on repeat in my mind, the tightness in my chest that shows up before I even know why. I do not want fear to write the story of this morning. So right now, I bring every anxious thought into your light, and I ask you to break its power over me. You are my refuge. You are my fortress. You are my God, in whom I choose to trust, even when my feelings are screaming the opposite. When news, messages, bills, and expectations rush at me like a storm, teach me to step back under your covering instead of trying to stand in the rain alone. Cover my mind when it starts to race. Cover my heart when it starts to sink. Let your peace guard me from the inside out, so that circumstances lose the right to control my mood. Lord, I ask for protection that is both spiritual and practical. Watch over my steps wherever I go today. Keep me safe on the road, at work, in every place my feet touch. Place your hand over my home, my family, everyone I love. Guard us from harm that we can see and from harm that we cannot see. But even more, protect us from living this day driven by panic instead of led by your Spirit. When fear chases me, remind me that I do not have to run. I can turn and hand that fear to you. And inside of me, build a deep, quiet place where your peace lives. A place I can return to in any moment, any room, any conversation. Teach me how to breathe, to pause, to pray instead of spiraling. Let this day become a lesson in trusting you more. Not because everything is easy, but because you are present in everything I face. Jesus, today I do not only ask you to fix my problems.
I ask you to shape my character. Let the way I think, speak, and act look a little more like you than it did yesterday. When I am tested, teach me patience. When people around me are hurting, teach me gentleness. When conversations get sharp or tense, remind me that I am called to answer with kindness, not with the first reaction my emotions throw at me. Help me to be a light in every place I walk into today. Not a spotlight on myself, but a quiet light that makes it easier for others to see hope. In rooms filled with stress, let your peace in me calm the atmosphere. Where there is gossip, help me choose silence or words that heal. Where someone feels invisible, give me eyes to see them and words to lift them up. Let my life point people toward you, not toward my own strength. Lord, I thank you for the hard days you have already carried me through, for the scars that became lessons instead of labels. When I look back, I can see moments where I thought I would break, but you held me together. Let that memory be my anchor when this day becomes heavy. Make me steady when others shake, gentle when others snap, forgiving when others offend. Use every difficulty today as training, not punishment, shaping my heart to be more like yours. And whatever I do today, from the smallest task to the biggest decision, help me do it with integrity, with honesty, and with a desire to honor you. Let my work be worship. Let my reactions be testimony. Let my whole day, even its ordinary parts, quietly say to the world, there is a different way to live, and it starts with a heart changed by you. Father, before I step into the rest of this day, I want to pause and say thank you. Not a quick, rushed thank you, but a real one. Thank you for life. Thank you for mercy that did not run out when yesterday ended. Thank you for grace that is strong enough for every weakness I will discover today. Thank you that even in this moment, while I am praying, you are already at work in ways I cannot see, arranging circumstances, touching hearts, and clearing paths I do not even know I will need. I give you this day completely. Every plan, every dream, every worry, every hidden fear. I place it all into your hands and choose to trust that your wisdom is higher than my understanding. Help me walk through each hour with a grateful heart, seeing your fingerprints in the small details and your faithfulness in the big ones. When blessings come, keep me humble. When delays come, keep me patient. When challenges come, remind me that you are still good, still present, still in control. Lord, let my life today be a living prayer. Let my thoughts honor you. Let my words heal, not hurt. Let my actions point people to your kindness, not my perfection. And when this day ends, let it be clear that I did not walk it alone, but hand in hand with you. I thank you for loving me, not because I perform well, but because your character is perfect and your love never fails. If you are praying these words with me right now, take a moment and type Amen in your heart before you type it anywhere else. Let that Amen be your agreement with God, your yes to starting this day in His presence and not in your own strength. And if this prayer is exactly what you needed this morning, do not keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who is waking up under the weight of fear or exhaustion. You never know how one simple prayer can change the way someone sees their entire day. As you go, may the Lord bless you, keep you, and fill every hour of this day with His peace, His favor, and His gentle guidance. You are not alone. He walks ahead of you, beside you, and behind you. And when your strength feels small, His is more than enough. On a cold April morning in 1945, a German staff officer stood at the edge of a muddy field near the Rhine and tried to count the end of his own army. He failed. There were simply too many men. For as far as the mist would let him see, gray-green uniforms stretched in silent columns, rifles already stacked, boots sunk into the same wet ground that had swallowed their last defenses. On his tally sheets, the numbers had grown from 200,000 to 300,000, to a figure so large that even the men doing the counting stopped believing what they were writing. 317,000 soldiers, 24 generals, one whole German army group erased from the order of battle in less than 3 weeks by the very opponents his own headquarters had once dismissed as amateurs playing at war. This was not Stalingrad. Stalingrad had taken the Red Army 5 months and more than 1 million casualties to break 91,000 starving survivors. The Ruhr surrender was faster, bigger in captured manpower than any surrender the German army suffered in the West. And it was not the Soviet Union that did it. It was the United States Army in the industrial heart of Germany, in a valley called the Ruhr. A battle so decisive that, outside a narrow circle of historians, almost nobody today can even name it. So here's the question this video exists to answer, and you will know the answer by the time you reach the end. How did a nation that joined this war late, that stumbled badly in North Africa, that fought for months in the hedgerows of Normandy, relearning basic infantry tactics, turn itself in barely a year into a force capable of surrounding and dismantling an entire German army group in 18 days? How do you go from being called soft and undisciplined by German officers to running a textbook encirclement on ground they had chosen and forcing hundreds of thousands of their soldiers to decide, one by one, that fighting was finally pointless? To understand that transformation, we are going to walk back into a Germany already broken, but not yet willing to admit it. A country whose last major river barrier has just been breached. A nervous high command that still believes the Ruhr's coal and steel can somehow keep the war breathing. And a single railway bridge that refused to fall when it was ordered to die, and in doing so, opened the door to the largest surrender the Western Front would ever see. By the spring of 1945, the Rhine was supposed to be the last line history remembered as Germany's shield. In the north, British and Canadian forces had already crossed it with a textbook set-piece assault, all careful planning, bridges, and airborne drops. In the south, French and American units were pushing toward the Alps. But it was in the center, at a modest railway town called Remagen, that the balance of the war quietly snapped. On the 7th of March, lead elements of the American 9th Armored Division rolled down into the valley and saw something no one had promised them. The Ludendorff Bridge, still standing, still usable, and still carrying German troops who were trying to retreat across it. It should have been rubble. Demolition charges had been placed. Orders to destroy it had been given. Yet due to exhaustion, confusion, and technical failure, the German engineers responsible had not finished the job. One set of charges went off badly, buckling the deck without bringing the whole span down. The rest stayed silent. The Americans did not stop to admire the view. They sprinted. Infantry and tanks pushed onto the bridge under direct fire, taking a structure the German army had assumed it could always deny to any enemy east of the Rhine. Within hours, a bridgehead existed on the far bank, a fragile patch of land held by men who were as surprised to be there as their opponents were to see them. For the next 10 days, engineers worked under artillery and air attack to keep the Ludendorff alive. They added supports, patched holes, reinforced beams, while behind them, a living river of American troops flowed across. By the time accumulated damage and sheer strain finally tore the bridge into the Rhine on the 17th of March, more than 25,000 soldiers with their tanks, trucks, and guns had already crossed. German reports taken after the war are brutally honest about what that failure cost them. One engineer officer admitted that faulty wiring and a jammed detonator had effectively donated the Reich a month less of life by letting a major crossing fall intact into American hands. Once the bridgehead existed, the physical bridge itself stopped being the story. General Omar Bradley, commanding the 12th Army Group, did not wait for Berlin to process what had happened. He ordered division after division across the new foothold and had pontoon bridges thrown up beside it as fast as engineers could lay them. By the last week of March, 2 full American armies stood on German soil east of the Rhine. The First Army, under General Courtney Hodges, breaking out from Remagen and driving east. The Ninth Army, under General William Simpson, crossing further north near Wesel and turning south and east. Between their advancing spearheads lay the Ruhr and everything it meant. The coal mines, the steel mills, the factories in cities like Essen and Dortmund that had fed the German war machine for years. The accident at one bridge had opened the door. What came next was not accident at all, but a deliberate plan to slam that door shut behind an entire German army group. To understand why the Ruhr Pocket was the place where Germany's Western Army finally broke, you have to understand what the Ruhr itself was. It was not just a region on a map. For decades, it had been the industrial lung of the country, a dense strip of mines, blast furnaces, and factories that turned coal into steel and steel into tanks, guns, and rail lines. Cities like Essen, Dortmund, Bochum, and Duisburg were more than names. They were the workshops that had fed the war machine that now lay bleeding on the Eastern Front. Defending that ground in early 1945 was Army Group B, a formation that on paper controlled around 400,000 men, built around the Fifth Panzer Army and the 15th Army. At its head stood a field marshal whose nickname among German soldiers was half admiration, half warning: the Führer's fireman. Walter Model had spent the last 3 years being sent to whichever front was collapsing fastest, ordered to hold impossible lines and somehow, again and again, stiffening them. He was a hard man, fiercely loyal to his troops and to a regime that did not deserve that loyalty. Facing him was not a single brilliant opponent, but a system that had finally learned how to use its parts together. Omar Bradley's 12th Army Group took the very tactic the German army had used to break France in 1940 and turned it back on its inventors. Instead of grinding straight into the Ruhr cities, the First Army would swing north from the Remagen bridgehead, while the Ninth Army swung south and east from its own Rhine crossings. The goal was simple and ruthless. Link up somewhere behind the Ruhr, seal every German unit inside in one move, and then squeeze. This idea was not new to the Americans, and it had hurt them before. 8 months earlier, in Normandy, a multinational encirclement at Falaise had almost trapped 2 German armies, only for a gap left too long in the closing ring to let tens of thousands of soldiers escape east. Inside Allied headquarters, Falaise became shorthand for an encirclement that worked only halfway. The Ruhr was designed very deliberately as Falaise corrected. 2 American armies under one commander, closing one ring with no seams, no argument about who owned which sector, and no opening anyone could slip through while staff officers hesitated. By the end of March 1945, the plan was in motion. Hodges's First Army was pushing out of the Remagen bridgehead, turning north and east around the southern edge of the Ruhr. Simpson's Ninth Army was driving south from its own crossings near Wesel, pushing toward an invisible line where, if both sides kept going, they would meet. On German maps, the Ruhr still looked like a stronghold. In reality, it was being turned into a pocket, and the man called the Fireman was about to find that he had been sent to put out a blaze that could not be controlled. It all snapped shut on a Sunday. On the 1st of April 1945, Easter morning, patrols from the American 2nd Armored Division pushing north from the south side of the Ruhr made radio contact with forward elements of the Ninth Army driving south near the town of Lippstadt. Later that day, their columns physically linked up. On maps, the line was just a pencil mark. On the ground, it meant something far heavier. Behind them, in a pocket roughly 80 kilometers deep and 60 kilometers wide, sat the whole of Army Group B, along with hundreds of thousands of civilians in cities already half shattered by years of bombing. For the American soldiers shaking hands over their jeeps, it did not feel like a historic moment. For the German command, it meant there was no way out left to draw. What followed was not a clean, orderly surrender. It was 2 weeks of hard fighting in a space that was shrinking every day. American infantry divisions, including the 8th and the 97th, pushed into the pocket from multiple directions at once, backed by tanks, artillery, and fighter bombers that owned the sky. German resistance varied wildly. Veteran panzer crews, some of the last experienced tankmen the Reich had, fought like men who had survived too many retreats to accept one more. Alongside them stood boys of 15 and 16 from the Hitler Youth, and old men from the Volkssturm militia, handed rifles they barely knew how to use, and told to die for streets already half in ruins. Inside the pocket, logistics simply disintegrated. Fuel for tanks ran out within days. Ammunition that had survived bombing could not be replaced because there was nowhere left to bring it from. One soldier of the 116th Panzer Division later admitted that by the second week, his unit no longer had a single working tank. Flak batteries defending the last rail yards counted their remaining shells and realized they had minutes of fire left against an American air presence that seemed to fill every daylight hour. Divisions were not being blown apart in one dramatic battle. They were being starved into irrelevance, one empty fuel drum at a time. The American command understood this and added another weapon to the pressure: words. Alongside shells and bombs came loudspeaker trucks, parked near German lines, broadcasting in German and urging units to surrender rather than die for a war whose end everyone could see. Leaflets dropped by the tens of thousands, printed with safe conduct passes bearing General Eisenhower's signature and simple instructions. Bring this to the nearest American soldier and you will be treated as a prisoner of war, not shot as a traitor. It was psychological warfare built on a blunt truth. An army without fuel, food, or hope does not need to be annihilated. It needs permission to stop. Every kilometer the pocket shrank, more units reached that point. Field Marshal Walter Model knew there was no tactical answer left. Hitler had forbidden surrender in the Ruhr. Model had sworn a personal oath as a Prussian officer and still took that oath seriously, even as the man he had sworn it to dragged Germany into ruin.
Signing a formal capitulation for Army Group B felt to him like an unforgivable betrayal. Continuing to fight felt, by mid-April, like murder without purpose. So, on the 15th of April, 1945, he chose something halfway between the two. He dissolved his own Army Group. On paper, the order was simple. Army Group B ceased to exist as a unified fighting formation. Volkssturm units and non-combatant personnel were told to discard their uniforms and go home if they could. The youngest boys and the oldest men were released to walk out of the shrinking pocket. The remaining troops, regular Wehrmacht units and what was left of the 15th Army and Fifth Panzer formations, were left free to decide, one by one, whether to keep fighting or lay down their arms. In practice, it was surrender without using the word. Model could tell himself he had not signed away his honor. His soldiers could see clearly that the war around them had run out of meaning. Once that order rippled through the pocket, the end did not arrive with one dramatic ceremony. It arrived as a flood. On the 16th of April, the entire eastern half of the pocket surrendered as a body. 2 days later, on the 18th, the western half followed. American riflemen advancing into the Ruhr that week described a war that, in roughly 72 hours, turned strangely quiet, replaced by streams of German soldiers walking toward them with hands raised or white cloth tied to their rifles. Columns that had spent years marching under orders now moved under their own decision toward barbed wire enclosures laid out on open farmland along the Rhine. Intelligence officers had guessed before the ring closed that perhaps 150,000 men might be trapped. The final count more than doubled that. Over 300,000 German soldiers became prisoners of war, the largest single surrender the German army ever made in Western Europe. Engineers fenced off fields and called them, in flat army language, temporary enclosures. Later they would be remembered, with more emotion, as the meadow camps. Conditions in those improvised camps were harsh at first. Food was short, shelter minimal, medical care strained. Thousands died in the weeks that followed, mostly from exposure and malnutrition, before the system caught up with the numbers it had created. Yet even there, another transition was underway. As the months passed, most of those prisoners spent less time behind wire than captives in other theaters. Many were filtered back out as labor for rebuilding, or released as the war formally ended and occupation policies shifted. For the American Army, the Ruhr was not only a victory, it was proof to itself of how far it had come. The same force that had been bloodied at Kasserine Pass, that had needed months in Normandy to relearn how to fight a modern enemy, had planned and executed a multi-army encirclement on a continental scale, and then finished the job with a mix of armor, artillery, air power, logistics, and psychological pressure that even German staff officers later conceded was as sophisticated as anything their own doctrine had ever produced. Walter Model never saw that analysis. On the 21st of April, 3 days after the last of his soldiers surrendered, he walked into a forest near Duisburg with 2 aides, handed them his personal effects, and shot himself rather than face capture. He was the highest-ranking German field commander to take his own life in the war. 9 days later, in a bunker in Berlin, Hitler did the same. Within weeks, the war in Europe was over. And yet, ask most people today to name a famous Western Front battle, and you will hear about Normandy, the Bulge, maybe Arnhem. Almost nobody says the Ruhr Pocket. Part of the reason is timing. The battle unfolded in the final chaotic weeks, overshadowed almost immediately by the fall of Berlin and Germany's total surrender on the 8th of May. Part of it is the absence of a single iconic image. No beaches, no airborne landings, no one photograph that could stand in for the whole story.
The Ruhr was a triumph of planning and execution rather than a desperate stand. But the German officers who lived through it, and the American soldiers who watched that endless column of prisoners walk past them into captivity, did not forget. For them, this was not defeat by slow exhaustion, the kind Germany had inflicted on others earlier in the war. It was defeat by a transformed enemy that had learned, painfully and quickly, how to outplan, outsupply, and ultimately outsoldier the army that once believed it had written all the rules.